Greetings, everyone. Welcome to Get the Pen. My name is Janine, folks. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for pressing play. I hope you like, share, comment. I love feedback. Um, Good evening to you. I'm going to start with my shout out for this week. This week, I want to shout out Michelle Gatlin for having this wonderful idea to put together a coloring book that encourages you to save money and to set savings goals. So there are coloring pages, there's information. We learn about IRAs, certificates of deposit, gold and silver, different types of currency, um, purchasing a home, purchasing an automobile, how to negotiate, side hustling, moonlighting, lots and lots of information. And what I love is the savings tracker. Try to get it in here. Savings tracker. So if you have a goal, like certain purchase you want to make, and you don't want to purchase it on credit, you want to pay cash for it, and you want to save up in order to purchase it. You can set goals, even if you are saving for a down payment on a house. And then she's got the 100 envelope challenge where you can save $5,000. And we want you to change your mindset and say, I am abundant, things like that. Great read. Michelle, shout out to you. I know she did the Sneaker Girls Club, which is already out and on Amazon. And I think her next project she says she's going to work on is going to be a cookbook, coloring book, cookbook, one or the other or both. You'll see, so stay tuned for that. And my book for today, I'm not going to read from it, but I just wanted to recommend it and show you Let Me Shine, my third book of poetry. You can check that out on Amazon on my author page, Janine Folks, or you can go to getthepen.net to purchase or read the description to learn more what it's about. But I can tell you it is inspirational poetry, and it is the third one, the third and most recent. And I was just reading a funny poem on there. Some of them are funny, and mind you, these were written almost 20 years ago. I have evolved a little bit since then, but they're kind of fun to revisit, interesting to see where my mind was at that time. Some of them are timeless, so still worth the read. I believe they're $10 to add to your library. Add any one of them. So this week, what I want to share is I wrote an article for the company that I work for. I work for a hospice, and I was asked, this is not the first time, I might even dig up the old article that I submitted for the company newsletter about, we talk about end of life things, hospice and things like that. So I've been working in hospice since 2006. I started in hospital chaplaincy in 2005 and then moved into hospice and end of life care almost immediately after. It was just a few months where the opportunity presented itself to me, and I reluctantly went ahead with it and ended up loving it, and I've been doing it ever since. So the title of the article that I wrote is called My Best Teachers, because working in hospice, my hospice patients and families have been such great and amazing teachers of life for me. Hearing their stories and learning about their experiences has taught me so much and taught me how to live. So I chose 5 things that my patients and families have taught me, and then I want to share those with you. I shared them in the article. Now, early in my hospice career as a chaplain, I thought most of my job would be mostly to give to people. I expected to give of myself and do that through compassionate presence and sharing prayers and somehow coming up with words of comfort during the most difficult time our patients and families could ever experience. This was what I signed up for, to be there for the dying, for the grieving. And sometimes you don't know what to expect, but you do know it's not going to be easy. And each situation is different. I wanted to become a chaplain because I had once been on the receiving side of spiritual and emotional support. I knew how helpful chaplains could be. I also knew what a not so good chaplain experience could be, and I wanted to be one of the chaplains who left a positive mark on a difficult experience. One of the most remarkable things is when someone says thank you after having one of the worst experiences of their life, losing a loved one. If they can thank you after that, when I was getting that, my first thought was, what are you thanking me for? This is awful. But somehow, my presence, and not only me but all spiritual caregivers and healthcare providers that offer a sense of solace to families, they appreciate that in a difficult situation. So that was just amazing to me that they could find a place in their heart to be grateful, even though they have just endured something terribly painful. And when I tell people that I'm a hospice chaplain, the first thing they assume is that my job is sad and depressing. And I struggle to find the words to explain how this role is rich with learning about the human experience. And most days, I feel like I receive more than I give. And I have learned countless lessons from my hospice patients and families over the years. My hospice patients, former and present, and I'm sure future ones, have been and will be my best teachers in the school of life. And here are my top eight lessons. I said five, but I lied. It's really eight. Okay, the first lesson: don't assume. I remember this was a few years ago. I have been maybe a couple years in, and I started out with pediatrics. Then I moved up to adults, and then I was doing both. And I had this patient who was in her 40s, and at the time she was only like a year older than me. So, of course, I'm projecting myself onto her situation. And when I pulled up to her house to complete her initial spiritual assessment, I sat in the car for a while contemplating how I would handle this case. So I mulled over what kind of demeanor would be appropriate for such a sad situation. So after about 10 minutes, I mustered up the courage to face the situation and attempt to comfort this patient and her family. So I rang the doorbell, and time slowed down as I waited for the door to open and be greeted by the family. Expecting sadness, when I walked in after the grandmother had opened the door, the patient greeted me with the brightest eyes and the biggest smile that I had seen in a while. Instead of me clumsily gathering words to comfort her, she ended up comforting and encouraging me. It was a pleasant surprise, and it taught me not to enter a situation with certain expectations, but to be open to meeting people where they are, with no agenda. And it's okay to be aware of the worst without expecting the worst. Let the visit happen. Let them tell you where they are at that moment in time. Don't be afraid. Embrace what comes, whether what you encounter is pleasant or unpleasant. You're a beacon either way. So I had to learn how to adapt to whatever I was walking into, because we never know. When we knock on that door, we don't really know what's behind it until we get into it. And some things, you're not just able to prepare for. You just have to be open to be ready to go with what's presented. And you can try to set the tone as much as you want, and we want to set a tone of peace, serenity, and love, mostly love and genuine care, authenticity, that we care. I care about you, and that's why I'm here. And that in itself is comforting, even in some of the most difficult situations. So you definitely don't want to go in with an agenda, because that can throw everything off. Lesson number 2: roll with it. I had a 90-plus-year-old dementia patient who kept saying that the chickens were getting away. Instead of explaining to her that there were no chickens, I ran around the room to catch them for her, and I told her it was handled. So when somebody tells you chickens are running around or whatever they tell you and they have dementia, you do not argue with them. You do not try to bring them into your reality. You go into their reality and you just roll with it. So I caught the chickens, put them back in the coop, and my patient was so comforted by that. It was as simple as that. Did not have to talk her out of her reality. Number three, take care of your eyes. I love getting advice from my patients. And one of my patients told me to take care of my eyes. And speaking of eyes, I had to lay off of the eyeliner and I got a sty right here. So I'm giving my eyes a break from the eye makeup. So you probably noticed I didn't have my eyeliner on, but that's why. And even in doing that and making that decision, I'm thinking of my patient who told me to take care of my eyes. To this day, I have multiple pairs of sunglasses in my car and around the house. And that's my way of honoring her and honoring myself by protecting my eyes as instructed by my former patient. Number four, silence is loud. I was sitting with one of my 34-year-old patients, a 34-year-old female who was dying of AIDS. Now, at the time, I was only a few years older than her, so this was pretty early on in my career. And I was sitting with her one day, and she looked really frustrated. She was fumbling for something, and I asked her, "What's wrong?" And she replied, "What's right?" And I understood that in her world, nothing was right. She had three teenage children. She was dying of AIDS. She was emaciated and she felt herself slipping away. So, who am I to tell her what's right? And showing her a silver lining would have been counterproductive and dismissive of her true feelings. So, I said nothing. I sat quietly and sullenly with her. In that moment, the silence was so loud and it gave her permission to grieve. It gave her permission to be angry. And that's what she needed in that moment. And that was my way of supporting her. I validated her feelings. Number five, eat the cake. Sometimes you have to eat the cake and you don't have to be anime. It's end of life. Enjoy. I vicariously enjoyed it when uh, I had a lung cancer patient and she came home to die. And when I showed up to do the assessment, she had a cigarette in one hand and a can of Pepsi in the other hand. And the first thing she said was, "Well, the damage is done, so I'm going to smoke until I leave here." So I wasn't going to tell her she shouldn't smoke. If it's the end of her life and the cigarette was bringing her joy and happiness, smoke your cigarette, drink your Pepsi. And they had given her a week to live, but this woman ended up living another year and a half later. And I think it's because she lived the rest of her life her way. She did what she wanted to do. So I would not dare forbid a lung cancer patient from smoking. If, as long as it's safe, if they're on oxygen, you don't want them causing any type of explosion. Of course, within reason, we have to be safe. And well, what frustrates me and what breaks my heart a little bit is when you have a situation where they can't eat the cake. One example, I had a lady, she was dying and she wanted some jelly beans. She was craving jelly beans. And I was ready to go look for some jelly beans. And I don't know if you ever looked for jelly beans when it wasn't Easter time, but they're really, really hard to find when it's outside of that Easter season. If y'all know where to find jelly beans out of Easter season, let me know. But even after my search looking for the jelly beans, her daughter forbade it. Like, no, she cannot have jelly beans. Her blood sugar will go up. And at that point, it's like, who cares about blood sugar? If she's dying, we know she's dying, and these jelly beans are going to make her happy. Can we make her happy? And so it just hurt me because I could not overrule the caregiver because they're in charge. She was in charge. She's the decision maker. So She couldn't have the jelly beans, and that made me sad because I feel like eat the cake. If it's going to make you happy and it's not going to cause you any pain or added misery, enjoy it. Number 6, the gift of confusion. And sometimes I find myself relieved when my patients start getting confused because then they can create a reality that's much more tolerable than the one that really exists. Sometimes that confusion is a blessing. Number 7, commonality. No matter the religion, no matter the belief system, if any belief system at all, because some of my patients are atheists, some are Muslim, some are Christian, some are Buddhist. I have patients, even atheists, like from across the spectrum of spirituality, religion. And the one thing that I have witnessed that patients want and need at the end of life is love and peace. Doctrine means nothing at the end of life. Number 8, life stories. One thing I've been privy to in hospice is learning so many amazing life stories that are love stories. Awareness of these stories add a richness to my being that no classroom could ever provide. Whatever role you play in hospice, or maybe you've had to deal with hospice before or not, I don't know, or maybe that's something you are looking into, or maybe you have a loved one, I don't know, but be sure to smell the roses. Our work is more sacred than sad. It is an honor to serve in such a sacred and delicate space. There is richness and wisdom to be gleaned. This is a classroom of life. Learn as much as you can, run with it, and teach others through the way you exist in the world. This has been another Get the Pen moment. And thank you for being here with me. I will see you next week.